Hi, my name is Shan Lavell. I'm a nurse with a master's in counseling psychology. I'm a foster parent for hard-to-house youth and a family mentor. But most importantly, I'm a mother and a grandmother, and that's really the heart of the matter. The information I'd like to contribute to the LEAP Manifesto is on the economics of caring for each other. The critical piece in understanding the economics of caring for each other really comes down to understanding children, human development, and something called attachment neuroscience, which is part of a larger group called the social determinants of health. The early years are really the cornerstone of the social determinants of health. Early childhood development is economic development. I'll introduce you to 3 economic heavy hitters, I call them, who have extensive experience in various aspects of economics and money markets, and who are leading the way in a simple shift, you would think, or the leap, if you will, to investing in people, particularly children in the vulnerable early years. The quality of our environment and what happens in the early years of our lives sets a critical foundation for our entire life course. And those sentiments come from Dr. Clyde Hertzman from British Columbia. By realizing that economic development is, that early childhood development is economic development, I suggest that we act on that information by doing 2 things. Becoming an attachment-informed community with an attachment-informed economic model. And I want to tell you about what attachment means. What is attachment? Well, attachment is connectedness and listening at the deepest level, attuned, responsive, and connected to a spirit of play, validated by leading-edge science. But the cornerstone piece of that is building emotional understanding, and I'll get to that a little later. Time is required. Calm, relaxed, and playful adults and healthy environments are required. So attachment actually trumps oxygen in human biology. If infants and young children don't receive connected and contingent communication, which is kind of a 2-way listening dance, through eye contact, touch, and voice, even if otherwise fed and changed, little ones will simply die. They have oxygen, but that is not enough. They need that connectedness. Connectedness is the super protective factor against adverse outcomes in childhood, adolescence, and life. Said another way, community and parent-child connectedness is the single strongest indicator that a child will reach adolescence and adulthood without experiencing teen pregnancy, violence, becoming addicted to drugs or tobacco, or dropping out of high school. And that is the short happy list. It's actually a much longer wonderful list. We remain attachment beings our whole lives. And here's a quote from Doctors Lewis, Amini, and Lannon, who wrote A General Theory of Love. Adults remain social animals. They continue to require a source of stabilization outside themselves. That means in some important ways, people cannot be stable on their own. Not should or shouldn't be, but can't be. Total self-sufficiency turns out to be a daydream whose bubble is burst on the sharp edge of the limbic brain. Stability means finding people who regulate you well, in brackets I'm putting emotionally, and staying near them. So, at the heart of an attachment-informed community, if you really want to put the rubber to the road, the one key factor that often falls off the table is building emotional understanding, so that we can then face the issues, as Naomi Klein so eloquently describes, how we tend to turn away from the earth. We tend to turn away from the darkest parts of humanity and the issues that are being played out every day in the news. Somehow we look away, but in order to really get to solve the problems, we have to face these issues. We have to face the earth and each other and feel what comes up when that happens. So as citizens or leaders going forward, we're going to need close connected listening partnerships with people that allow us to feel what we feel about things. And from that safe and non-judgmental space, clearer thinking follows. We have feelings, even if we might not be super aware of them, about what is really going on in our environment and in our social world, and in our cities, in our neighborhoods. So two people who really informed me on these issues have been Patty Whipfler at handinhandparenting.org and Gordon Neufeld of the newfeldinstitute.com. Pardon me, that's newfeldinstitute.com. Another important body of work that keeps me on the ground as a parent and as a foster parent is about our physical bodies and our hearts in particular, about the HeartMath Institute and the role of our hearts in meditation and in connectedness to each other, our ECGs and our EEGs. That's the electrocardiogram and the electroencephalogram for the brain. We've actually seen how we're just amazingly connected. At two people in close proximity to each other, we're actually measuring attachment. In close proximity, my heart rate is being reflected actually in your EEG. It's very mysterious and wonderful, but it is scientific and it can be measured. That's that part about finding people who regulate us well and staying close to them. So there's an increasing popularity of the practice of yoga, for example, that is very exciting. One of the foremost trauma specialists, Dr. Vessel van der Kolk, pardon me, has really turned to yoga for therapeutic use to heal us from traumas. And I'm going to speak a little bit more about early childhood and trauma in a moment. But as an adult in this culture, I find this helps me embody less fear and more courage in facing my vulnerability in this attachment destabilizing environment. There are big things that have really moved for me in my work as a foster parent and as a mother of a grandchild that really pushed me to creating my own attachment-informed community, and next I'm going to share with you an attachment-informed economic model. But first, heavy hitter number one as a resource I want to mention to you is Charlie Coffey, a retired business executive with the Royal Bank of Canada for 44 years, was Executive Vice President of Government Affairs and Business Development. And Charlie has been a tireless advocate for many years for the business case of early childhood development. A great resource for anyone wanting to really look at these issues in Canada. I got a chance to meet Charlie and talk with him about his boss, Alan Taylor, CEO of the RBC for 25 years, who just happens to be a shirt-tail relative. Charlie told me that it was Alan that said, "Charlie, you have to meet Dr. Fraser Mustard," who at that time had information on the economics of early childhood development. And as it turns out, the best rate of return is on the poorest and most high-risk families. And that leads me to heavy hitter number two, Art Rolnick. Now, Art is an economist that worked with the Federal Reserve Bank Minnesota. He's retired now, but you can watch one of Art's TED Talks if you search Rolnick, Rolnick. In essence, what Art had to say is this: early childhood development is our best investment. We want people to think of early childhood development as economic development. When you focus on at-risk children, it is economic development with a very, very high rate of public return, Art said. He also said we need to do 5 things. We need to focus on at-risk populations, invest in quality programs, start early, pre-conception to 3. We need to empower parents, as this isn't just about providing daycare. It is about shoring up parent-child connectedness in our communities. It's about building emotional understanding and becoming attachment informed, because the return on investment is huge. And Art finally said, you've got to bring it to scale. Everybody's got to be involved. It's not good enough to only invest in 30% of at-risk kids. This is not a moral judgment, but an economic fact, according to Art Rolnick. Heavy hitter number 3 is James Heckman, Nobel Prize-winning economist. And this is what James says. We find the rates of return on investment in early childhood development higher than anything the stock market can offer. I'm an economist after all, and in a time of tight budgets, we have to really be hard-nosed. We have to understand that if we have a limited budget, we need to spend our money where it has the highest rate of return. He also says, the hard science of soft skills has predictive power. And there are many resources that can validate the hard science of soft skills. My favorites, as you've heard, are the heart rate variability, EEG, and ECG. James told me two disturbing things that tell us a lot about populations where poverty is increasing and family connectedness is eroding. In American youth who apply to the U.S. military, about 75% are ineligible due to criminal records, obesity, and low cognitive capacity. They can't pass the test. The second example, in a U.S. adult literacy survey, 20% of the workforce have a literacy rate so low that if you gave them a bottle of pills with some slightly complicated directions written on them, they wouldn't fully understand. For more information, visit heckmanequation.org. So, I can't move on without sharing something on the ACEs, Adverse Childhood Experiences research, that says that highly stressful events, including things like divorce, having an alcoholic parent, witnessing family violence, and emotional, physical, and sexual abuse, all those things impact our health and our cognitive capacities. The more ACEs, the greater risk of poor outcomes. So, I'm going to move next to my secure attachment investment model. My cat is a little bit in the way. This is Cleopatra. Okay, so what we have here across the top, investment in social determinants of health, attachment understanding being primary and informative for education, informing housing, workplaces, informing how food security impacts a mother and a father and a child 0 to 3, and how attachment understanding includes play and having a wonderful natural environment with a great source of water, and of course many other things. This is a short list. So as I said, these things are, as social determinants of health, can be talked about and in our communities and in our various legislative bodies to provide regulation, so that the impact of this on mother, father, and child will result in healthy outcomes, incredible return on investment, creative, productive people, resilient people, empathic people, skilled people, connected and happy, caring for the earth and each other. And resilient. I mean, life is not all easy. We need to have buffers from the storm. We need to have a close connected community through the vulnerabilities of life and the losses that we inevitably incur. So, moving on, I want to talk about how things actually are right now. I want to talk about the impact of the current attachment destabilizing economic model. So with little or no attachment understanding, we have an education system hobbled by social issues, expensive housing, workplace has a growing low-income population of fewer middle class, and a small number of people getting very wealthy from unrestrained capitalism. We've got increased food prices, a high carbon footprint of all the free trade agreements that hustle everything back and forth across the oceans, and our our freshwater systems also deeply affected, decreased biodiversity. Most families have little time or money for recreation, which is essential to the developing child. So the impact of this stress, of these problems, results in chronic disease rates that are incredibly expensive later on in life, increased chance that this person will end up on disability and welfare. We have fragile children that become challenged adults with increased crime and aggression, and we have a decreased skilled middle class. We have increasing personal and public debt, ineffective economic strategies, trying to hit these issues in a piecemeal fashion and not understanding human growth and development and how we raise resilient, healthy, playful adults. So, and finally, there's a disregard for the earth and a disregard for caring for each other, particularly a disregard for this information on the early years. So, moving to wrap up, in this short introduction to my information on this, all families are vulnerable in an attachment destabilizing environment. In an old graphic called the health gradient, we were focused on individual approaches, and then we were coming to awareness about how poverty creates an uphill climb for people, how poor housing, unemployment, inadequate food and nutrition, lack of education, and other health hazards creates a really steep grade for even the most securely attached individual. Now, if you grow up with adverse childhood experiences, especially in those early years, you end up with having something called an attachment injury, which really puts a lid on your ability to climb out of and be resilient to the challenges of unemployment or lack of education, for example. So, what I'm proposing is that we educate ourselves on all of this and go to these resources, sign the LEAP Manifesto, connect on Facebook with me at Heart to Heart for All. I'm on Twitter at Shan_Lavell, and my email is shanlavell@gmail.com. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I wish you a good day. All the best.